Hey, what's up? What's up, YouTube gaming family? It is K-Rod here, back at it with some gameplay for y'all. I'm just playing some Sikander 555, you know, past beef set gameplay, and yeah, man. I wanted to kind of give like my take on what's going on with the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection talk. But before I do that, be sure to hit the like button, share this video around, and let's get this video started. So, there's been some good recent update news with Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection having some good updates. And credit to Scotty Combat, he's been putting on a lot of work with Mortal Kombat news. I would definitely suggest go taking a look at his videos because I personally believe his videos are very informational. If you guys want to know more about what's going on in the MK scene, with Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, it is confirmed that UMK3 is coming to the collection, but there's also talk that possibly MK Trilogy, the Saturn version, could come, and I'm not too sure how much of the news could really be told, but there's a lot of good talk of the game that were from the 2D era that were like high classical. They could very well make the cut for the collection. Personally, with me, I would like to see Mortal Kombat go in the direction of having a strong player base with all the classical titles. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a very old school, ancient Mortal Kombat fan. I think what really makes Mortal Kombat such a great franchise is that this game is like all about like one, it teaches you about it teaches you a great lore about certain character stories, but it has such a good it has such a good detail of like how things go within the realm of people's characters mindset and what their sense of morality is. So it teaches you like the content of the character of a man or a woman. So therefore it shows you what certain characters are based out of with their goal and with their vision. So I mean that's what I enjoy out of Mortal Kombat, because it just teaches you about life, about how people see their views, and every character has like a great story behind them, because it's all about like the vigilance, survival of being a good person or being a bad person. So that's what I enjoy out of MK. It's a really good game that showcases a lot of character between mankind. But overall, my whole take on MK Legacy Collection coming with more 3D, well, more 2D era titles that are classics, I'm all for it, man. Personally, with me, I think MK4 Gold would be a really good addition to the game if they remastered it, especially with like the graphics being way better. If they could do something like that, I think this would be like the best era within our generation to see MK Legacy Collection. And best believe for me, I'm definitely gonna get it. I'm probably gonna get it for my PC, just to have like more accessibility to play online. I'm hoping that for PC users, it's not gonna be like buggy and the gameplay is not gonna be all crappy and all that. So I'm hoping that it's definitely gonna sell to the public. We should be getting a release date possibly by, I want to say, November. That's gonna be the news that I'm hearing, but I'm not too sure how much of the news that we're ever gonna see. So it's gonna be interesting to kind of see where things go, because if we don't see anything coming to the game titles other than just your classical MK1 to MK3, then I mean to me personally, I'm fine with it, because it's like we have so much to kind of like offer with the game, because us fans, for us kind of demanding like what we want. um I think it's going to be telling to see where things go. So I don't know, man. I think where things will be going, it's gonna be interesting to see where things play out. Now, as far as like where things can evolve itself, it's gonna be interesting. I'm definitely I'm definitely excited for it. So I don't know what's gonna happen, but I would hope good ideas come to the picture. But yeah, as far as other ideas, um, I am like I don't know what else I could really say other than like we should have, we should have other titles brought to the game. Like to me personally, if you guys really want my honest like opinion, we definitely need the 3D era titles, and I say this because NRS is in a position where this franchise could really go down south pretty quickly. Because if we don't get any good 3D era titles with Legacy Collection, and we're just basically we're just so dependent off of like what we see with what they give us with, just basically classical remake titles, which is fine. It's just like, I'm fine with like a Legacy Collection because that's what MK fans should have been got like should have been given a long time ago. I know that we had Classic Collection back in like the PS3 days, but other than that, it's just kind of like, okay, do we really need to like go backwards or do we need to go forward? And I think personally with me, my whole take is that we need to go forward and we need to stop like, allowing NRS to just give us crappy ideas that aren't going to be worth, worth, buying into with what they promote. And you know, I think honestly for me, like I just think we need to start being a little bit more, demanding and hyper aggressive as consumers to stop paying into crap that we don't like to see. Now, I could be wrong. I just think that, when you're paying like, you know, I think honestly, with the terrible inflation that's going on within today's gaming world, especially like, specifically, in the U.S. per se, would you be okay paying $70 for a video game like Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, where you don't know if it's guaranteed that Legacy Collection is going to sell to your liking? And the answer is no, because you would never want to pay for a game that's worth $70 if it's not worth buying that. When you could just go buy the same game at a much cheaper cost if somebody gives it to you, through a third party, like yeah, through a third party seller, and then you could just buy it for like at least maybe like $40, if not maybe close to 50. And I'm actually gonna give like my whole take on the current state of like the U.S. like economy, because I need to make like a little economics video on that. But I'm probably gonna talk about like the gaming industry of like why it's so expensive to just buy video games, and it's just terrible. But I'm gonna finish up MK, and then I'm also gonna just talk about that. After I finish that up. So I definitely got like a couple of videos to kind of break that down for y'all. But yeah, my whole take is that where MK stands, we cannot allow as fans poor franchise titles to give us mediocre content. And if we as fans keep accepting that, then what's going to end up happening is that Mortal Kombat is going to fail as as a franchise, and you're not going to enjoy the things that you want out of Mortal Kombat. Therefore, the game is going to be lacklustered for the next few titles that come about, and it's not going to be worth your money paying for it. Now, I could be wrong because people could say, "Well, K-Rod, that's not true. Like you're just being selfish and blah blah blah. NRS doesn't have control over this, and Warner Brothers and all that." Yeah, you have a semi point because Warner Brothers, they hold copyright, ownership over what MK does. So the problem with Warner Brothers is the same problem with any other corporatist firm that takes over certain industries, and they don't give us consumers what we want to pay for. So it's not to say that Warner Brothers isn't doing their job effectively. It's more to say like Warner Brothers has they have certain consumer obligations that they need to make, because if Warner Brothers is continuing to give you garbage content for money, then the problem with any, you know, how should I say, the problem with any demarketization of any idea where the devalued products are not worth buying for is through a means of poor, how should I say, poor corporate greed, and therefore it's anti-free market principles in terms of the businesses are not giving you what they like what you pay for as a consumer, and you are having to waste your time for putting money to this company that is not giving you the product that you want. So the only reason why Warner Brothers is able to get away with the crap that they do with telling NRS to say, "Hey, you must make us these titles, or else you guys are gonna get the boot, out of your own company, and we'll just hire somebody else to basically do Mortal Kombat content, but we're just gonna keep, you know, putting out crappy content." And I don't know if that was Ed Boon's choice, like in terms of how he thought maybe at one point in time when Midway was doing good back then, they had everything going where the money, I'm pretty sure it was big back then, because if you guys don't know, back then, like when Mortal Kombat was in its infancy, coming up as a franchise, um a lot of people don't realize that this game had a lot of great support from the community. And when the game started to become more popularized, there was a lot of funding for the game back in the 2D era, especially from MK1 all the way up until like what, MK Gold, or definitely UMK3. But then once the 3D era came, that being MK, I want to say MK Deception. Yeah, it had to be MK Deception or Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Yeah, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. That's when Mortal Kombat started to become a globally recognized game, because for one, the good thing about the PS2 when it first came out was that Sony did it right, but what they had to do was that they had to make online wireless, and the problem with online was that it was completely wired, so you didn't really have the access to kind of like make make a console where you could just go online and enjoy what you wanted to play. So that was like the downside with Sony. Like, you had to kind of like play with select few games that gave you the ability to give you online, but the online quality was not all the way perfect, and they should have done better with giving you maybe like some alternative level innovational products where you could play through a wireless network like adapter, which the technology was there back then. It's just that for the Sony PlayStation console, the technology at that time was not yet properly innovated. So like basically you had to work with what you basically had to your disposal. So it wasn't all the way perfect back in like the early 2000s. So it was never like the right way to go. And there was definitely a lot of like clunky dysfunctions that didn't give you like the right product. So I will say, like, compared to like what I had to go through, growing up playing PS2, I would say that gaming generations are far better in today's era, where you now have more versatility with consoles, and the consoles are far more powerful to produce more processing power to give you the ability to kind of like go about your way and pay for like a good amount of money that's actually worth your investment. And that's what NRS kind of thrived off of. They made good gaming titles for primarily the PS2 leading into the Xbox to be good powerhouse consoles to handle the graphics and the processing memory to like give you what you pay for. But it's like as games started to like, devalue themselves, and then the technology started to get way too hyperactive with trying to like, to try to compound too much content for for the sake of like corporate greed. Like I think NRS kind of took advantage of that because Ed Boon was like, hey, I'm already making millions of dollars, but it's like, what better way than to work with Warner Brothers, that is like one of the big corporate monopoly powerhouses that utilize their power to kind of like, take control of most media industries along with the movie industry too. So video games, movies, TV shows, even the comic book industry. Like I mean, they have such a massive control. Like I don't even want to even get into Warner Brothers, but you guys kind of get what I'm saying. I mean, if I made like a whole documentary like about them, I'd probably be talking for hours like about them. But yeah, if you guys ever want to look at like what Warner Brothers has done as a company, yeah, they're a pretty big, massive corporatist firm that has done a lot of massive, influence in terms of the American market for just movies, comics, media industry for televisions and stuff like that. So yeah, they're definitely one of the big players that has affected a lot of industries, especially for video games, movies, TV, like anything that you could think of with like, the broadcasting sector of like what businesses have done over the years. Well, especially within like the past century, I would say. Yeah, like I think Warner Brothers is just up there. So yeah, they've been around for like a long time. But yeah, that's basically about the problem with NRS, man. Mortal Kombat has a great future, but I think Warner Brothers is just in the way because I'm sure Ed Boon, he listens to what the fans say, but I think it's just the greed that got to him to be like, you know what? Let me just kind of ride this last boat of what I could do with Mortal Kombat. But once it's my time to go, then somebody else will take in charge. But I think what will happen is that, in my honest opinion, the future of Mortal Kombat is going to be determined by the next person that is going to take over the next leadership phase, and then put their foot down and say, "Hey, we really need to take control of our franchise, but we also need to stop this copyright nonsense with Warner Brothers where they have all the, control over our company." And I think eventually if they could try to opt out of that deal with Warner Brothers, they can definitely make a lot of noise. I would really like to see Mortal Kombat be similar to Call of Duty in a way. Not actually like Call of Duty where they're having like, just copy and paste content. I want it to be competitive in a sense where this game should be ran by multiple different developing teams, and out of these developing teams they have different titles that are focused on different genres of like what they can do. So like so like let's just say, for example, if MK Legacy Collection were to come out and you have multiple different companies that are producing the game, which, by the way, the developers that are making this MK Legacy Collection are developers from Street Fighter. So that's a pretty good sell from NRS. They're not having to put a lot of time, or they're not putting any time into the game, so they're giving another group of developers to kind of do what they can do with this game. And I think that's good because, one, you're not having to like basically, like you're not having to waste your resources on bringing back retroactive games that have been around for 30 plus years in the arcade scene. So now you can work on the next MK game, which I'm going to get to that in this video about what the next MK game should really be based off of. But on top of that, you now have a really good structure of where things can go. and there's so many things that can be prioritized with so many good NRS titles. And I think, like, especially with having multiple developments ran by multiple different companies to give you different ideas for the game, I think that would be really good because one, it would give the fans more incentive to be like, hey, we really love NRS more, but we also like Sledgehammer Games, or we like Respawn Entertainment, or we like Santa Monica Studios that develop God of War. Like, there's so many great ideas that you can do with having multiple different companies develop Mortal Kombat, because now the investments will be far more greater, and then the games would be far more interesting. Like, let's just say if we want to have like another Mortal Kombat Mythologies that's based like around Sub-Zero and Scorpion, that'd be pretty dope. You could probably have Santa Monica Studios work on that for, let's just say, a few years. And then you could also have, let's just say, I don't know, Respawn Entertainment create Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks 2. Or you could also have, I don't know, let's just say Dice, even though Dice, they don't specialize in fighting games. But yeah, like, you could have like multiple different companies make more Mortal Kombat games that can sell far greater, but for the right, investment. So my whole take is that NRS has a pretty good ceiling of like where things can go, but it's not going to be easy of where they're going right now, because I think NRS is only focusing on what the aspects of what could be brought to the franchise for the least amount of work, but for the most amount of money. So it's gonna be telling to see where things go, because if NRS does not make any moves to fix the franchise, it's really going to show where the future of Mortal Kombat will be. So I would say that if they really want to save their asses, they should really probably just give us all the titles from MK1 all the way up to all the 3D era games. So all 2D era and 3D era games would be added to the Legacy Collection, and after that, that's pretty much it, man. I mean, you pretty much have the complete game right then and there, because all you have to do is just create like a whole database of like all the games, and you could just basically turn it into like a master, like a master collection type of game, where if I want to play MK9 online with friends, and it's all crossplay with like a peer-to-peer connection type of deal, I think it's really good. I think there's so many great ideas that you can do with that. So I'm not too sure where things will go, but it can definitely go in that right direction. So yeah, I'm not too sure, man. It's definitely gonna be telling to see where the future will go. So yeah, um, I'm excited for Legacy Collection. I think Legacy Collection has some really good titles in there. Hopefully we could just get MK1 to Trilogy, and then we have UMK3 and then MK4 Gold. I'll definitely be fine with that. But if they add the 3D era titles later in the future, I'm totally fine with that as well. Alright, let's talk about MK2, the next MK game. So, here's my take on this. The next MK game will definitely show where the future of this franchise will go. And my whole take on this is that we do not want Mortal Kombat 1 again. The next MK game should be like Mortal Kombat 2, but it should either go past into the future or start from the very beginning to like the MK9 Armageddon ending, or like there's two different ways you can go about it. I'll probably talk about the first idea. You have the Great Kung Lao at the very first tournament. Let's just say Kung Lao ends up defeating Goro. That's Kung Lao's great ancestor, not actual Kung Lao. So the Great Kung Lao is in the Mortal Kombat tournament, and therefore Liu Kang is no longer in the picture. Well, yeah, he's still in the picture, but he's the keeper of time. So therefore, him and Garrus are basically running the time, universe in terms of where things will go. But the catch is that the Great Kung Lao, he defeats Goro, but then he ends up getting defeated by, let's just say, Shao Kahn. Let's just say Great Kung Lao, he defeats Goro, and he ends up becoming the Mortal Kombat champion. But then eventually Shao Kahn, he gets to him and he ends up killing him. So what could happen from there is that when the Great Kung Lao ends up dying, it now sparks like a whole different um, brand of fighters where you could basically like go from all the other characters that were never mentioned in the original timeline, that being King Gorbak, you got Kotal Khan's father. I wouldn't bring back Kotal Khan, but I would bring back his father. But his father would be in the story, and then, he could also be playable. I don't mind having him in the story. He could fight King Gorbak and Goro. Goro would be like Goro would be dead for that point in time, but he would come back to life after Shao Kahn ends up killing Kung Lao, and then he could like bring Goro back through sorcery. So I think it's a good idea, but instead of Goro being like the next big bad boss, make Kentaro to be the next Goro, and then Goro ends up being like the next well, you could turn him into like the next I don't even know, like I wouldn't mind Goro being like a good second tier boss, but Kentaro would be like the evolution of a stronger Goro. But if Goro is to be like, let's just say, a good boss, but he's not as strong as he once was because Shao Kahn brought him back to life, so Goro is kind of regaining his skill. He should be considered to be like one of those like much more good fighters that understand the role play of being a good strong general. So he'll lead the Shokan, but Kentaro will be like the next strongest fighter out of like, the whole pack. And then after that you have Shiva, and then from that point on you could have their little war between like the Tarkats, and then also the Centaurs, that being Motaro and his people. So I don't mind that. I think it's a good idea. But on top of that, you would need to also bring in all the other characters, that being Sub-Zero's ancestors, for Bihan's ancestors with his great grandfather in the tournament. I would bring in Grandmaster Takeda, the original founder of the Shirai Ryu. And then from that point on, we would just bring in. I wouldn't mind bringing in Taven and Dagon. I don't see why not, because they're actual gods. So, I mean, they would technically be in that conversation, but let's just say like they're younger children. They're younger children that are like seeing the Mortal Kombat tournament. They're not actually in it, but they're actually like seeing the competition that is being brought into the field. But in this tournament, you could have the Great Kung Lao, you could have Goro, you could have King Gorbak, you can have Kotal Khan, or the Great Kotal Khan, that being Kotal Khan's father or his great ancestor. And then after that you have Shang Tsung, and then you have King Jared, and then I would bring in Sindel, and then you could have Kitana and let's just say Jade, because they're younger children. So this is like thousands of years before what the MK9 version or UMK3 version of the Mortal Kombat tournament. So I would be fine with this, but then after that you spin it off to say, after the Great Kung Lao had died to, let's just say, Shao Kahn, Shao Kahn ends up wanting to reinvade Earthrealm, where that being like Raiden, he's still in the picture, but the next person that takes over for Earthrealm would be I wouldn't mind bringing in Kai to the picture. I think Kai being the next great fighter for Earthrealm, instead of having Liu Kang in the picture, would be good. But I wouldn't mind having Scorpion in there too, because if you really do think about it, let's just say Hanzo, he actually becomes like, I don't know, there's so much lore that would be taken away. But you can basically connect the past into a new future because like basically the future is supposed to be set where this is Liu Kang's era. So what would we do to fix the wrongs and create a different past that would be a whole different mindset? I would say the Great Kung Lao beats Goro, but he ends up losing to Shao Kahn, and Shao Kahn kills him. But Kung Lao, he becomes a new Liu Kang, where he gains retribution to defeat Shao Kahn, but Shao Kahn ends up defeating him in a rematch where Shao Kahn ends up coming back to life through the means of Quan Chi or whoever. But the main big bad wolf that ends up winning the whole tournament is to be, well, actually, you know what? Like instead of having like, well, Kung Lao be the main hero of Earthrealm, I would have Shijinko in this whole tournament because the reason why I say Shijinko is because Shang Tsung was in the tournament before. And remind you, if you had Shijinko in the tournament predating to Mortal Kombat Deception, then that would be so much better because now Shijinko knows Shang Tsung's plan in order to kill King Jared. Well, I see. I want to say this is probably way before Shijinko was even alive. So I'm gonna say, you know, Jared was already dead. The Great Kung Lao, he was already dead way before Shijinko's time. But the minute when Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn were working together to take over Earthrealm, and Shijinko knew about their plans, and he didn't understand at the time of the of the incident leading to Mortal Kombat, Deception slash Armageddon timeline. That should be Shijinko's timeline change, where this is younger Shijinko that comes into the tournament, and therefore he challenges Shao Kahn to the end game battle, and then he defeats him after he sees Kung Lao getting killed. So I would say Shijinko, he comes into the tournament and he becomes the next champion for Earthrealm. So I think Shijinko coming into the picture is far better because now we have a story where Shijinko would be the next champion and Liu Kang made him into the next champion to run Earthrealm. Because now Kung Lao, he got his revenge in defeating Shao Kahn, but Shao Kahn ended up coming back from the dead, and then he ended up killing Kung Lao. So Kung Lao dies, and then Shijinko's like, "Oh wow, Kung Lao, you're dead. I must avenge you." Blah blah blah. Like if you had something like that where Shijinko is the next champion, that would be great. Now, as far as Sub Zero and Scorpion goes, how I would go about that is that I would make sure that if Scorpion is going to ever be Hanzo Hasashi, like there's two different ways I could go about this. I could either make Scorpion evil, but he ends up becoming good at the very end, but he's a wild card character because he doesn't understand what's going on, but he also understands that he has a lot of power with what he can do. So what would happen is that Scorpion and Bihan would both fight each other. Bihan kills him, but Quan Chi brings him back to life. But Scorpion finds out that Bihan did not kill his family, so Quan Chi killed his family. But what ends up happening is that Hanzo ends up killing Quan Chi, and then Bihan ends up fighting Hanzo, where Hanzo takes Bihan's life, but then Bihan, he doesn't come back as Noob Saibot. He comes back as Sub Zero, but he also has like sorcerer ability to bring, to bring undead figures that's mixed with ice. Like I had like a good idea for Sub Zero, where he would be a whole different character, but he would still be Sub Zero, but he'd be like the undead sorcerer of Sub Zero. So he has Quan Chi's abilities, but he has like sorcery where he uses ice to actually mimic, the sorcery of controlling monsters with his, ice cryomancer abilities. Or I would probably just make Noob Saiba into Sub Zero, where he's mixed with ice and shadow. shadow like abilities. So the Netherrealm basically makes him into like a super monster. So I think that would be really good. I had some really good ideas. So if you guys like that, definitely let me know. But yeah, I mean, I like personally with me, I have so many great ideas for Sub Zero and for Scorpion, where Hanzo he could end up killing both Quan Chi and Bihan, or let's just say him and Bihan actually forgive each other, but Bihan and Hanzo they end up turning their backs up against each other, where let's just say Hanzo and Bihan they become mutually respectable to each other, but Bihan still ends up becoming evil, and let's just say he him and Kuai Liang end up fighting each other, and then Hanzo ends up killing Bihan and Kuai Liang in both instances per se. I mean, there's so many things that you could do, in the scenario, but I would kind of switch up with the story to say Bihan ends up either living, and therefore Hanzo gives Bihan a chance to survive, but Bihan ends up taking evil with Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung, and he wants to make the Lin Kuei into like let's just say like the Dragon King's army with Onaga, and then Hanzo ends up killing Bihan, and then he ends up killing Sector and Cyrax. Like, if you had something like that where Hanzo ends up going out on a rampage because he still believes Bihan is still evil, even though he didn't kill his family, what he would do is that let's just say Raiden was able to kind of bring Hanzo's family back through the Jinsei chamber. What Hanzo would do from there is that he'd be reunited with his family, but his family does not have the same condition to actually know who he is. So Hanzo would be frustrated and he'd be pissed off to the point where his family has been troubled, but they also have like a curse put onto them where, let's just say, in order for him to actually be reunited with his family, it would have to be set where Hanzo has to end up being more evil in order to break the curse with his family. Let's just say like the Jinsei brought them back to life, but some curse from the Netherrealm just made them like disown them, like disown him for who he actually is. So if they had something like that, that would be crazy, but it would be awesome because it's like that's what Mortal Kombat's supposed to be. It's supposed to be nostalgic to kind of make you think about different mindsets. So there's a lot that you can do with MK2. MK2 can be like one of the most craziest stories that you could turn it into. But this is a world in Liu Kang's image where Liu Kang, he's no longer in the story. He's still going to play a role in the story. He's still going to say, well, this is what time could show us, blah, blah, blah. But whoever is the next ruler of Outworld or the Netherrealm, depending on who takes over, is going to take over. And actually, before I even end this video, my villains that I would pick in this game would be Havoc, Onaga, Dagon, and Shao Kahn, Quan Chi, Shang Tsung, and I would pick Rain. I would put Rain in that mix. And I would put Argus. I would have him and Rain actually fight each other. That'd be pretty dope. And then I'd probably put Sindel in there. But Sindel, she would get killed by I would have Shijinko kill Sindel or Taven kill Sindel. But I would have it set where King Jared he ends up getting killed, but what happens is that Sindel actually sees King Jared get executed right in front of her, but Shao Kahn puts the curse in front of her, and therefore she has like a disdain for Kitana and all the other Edenians. So I don't know. I mean, there's so much that you can do, but I wouldn't have Sindel do the same thing what she did in MK9 by killing most of what the roster, like Jade and all those guys at the church. Honestly, I would have probably Shijinko defeat Sindel, because Shijinko would be the next Liu Kang. So Liu Kang would still be in the story, but if he needs to step in, let's just say if Shao Kahn manages to get way too much power, it would be a battle between Shujinko, Shao Kahn, and I would put in let's just say I put Taven in there, and I'll throw Raiden in there. But Raiden would be more like a he would be a protectorate. And also I would put Fujin. I put Fujin in the story. I would make Shujinko and Fujin to be like the next deadly like alliance, but they would be like the protectorates of Earthrealm, and then I would put Kai in there too. So yeah, there's so many ideas that you can do, but I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there because there's a lot of great ideas that you could throw out there. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you think MK2 would be a whole different story? Also for the mechanics for Mortal Kombat 2, um, we need to get rid of cameos. Cameos need to be taken out. Another thing that we should make sure that we get rid of is like they need to get rid of like the bullshit combo mix-ups. I think like gameplay wise, if they get rid of that and just make the game pure 1v1 where you have to think smart about your decisions, that would make it a really good game. Another thing that they need to do is make uplock more punishable, and make flawless block more counter heavy. So I think overall MK2 will probably end up being more like, I would hope it's kind of similar to like Mortal Kombat 9 or Mortal Kombat Deception. So I would be more okay with seeing that. So I don't know. There's so many ideas that you could bring to the table, but personally with me, I want to see weapon combat back. I want to see air combat back, and every character should have a parry, but it's a special move that they possess in order to whiff punish opponents faster. So yeah, that's pretty much what I gotta say. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So hope you guys enjoy that little pep talk that I had, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Have a good day. Bye.